Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show is always brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider and a provider for everything you need to get through winter storms when we get them, and we will get them eventually. It's not just rock salt, but mag, ice pellets and flakes, Petalo Premium Snow and Ice Melter, Biomelt, Geomelt, spreaders, shovels, snow blowers, and so much more. So prepare ahead of any winter storms. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125, or just go to the website, omnitruevalue.com. And my Lord, he is dressed again today.
Yes, well, but you explained why we had to do the show tonight at 8 o'clock, right?
Not yet. Hold on, I'm
Oh,
trying to get us back up on the screen here. Something's not. There we go. Hold on a
uh-oh.
second. We're back there. I'm just trying to get rid of this box on the frame on the top and put it on. There we go. Yeah, so you had to do another round of talks. So you should let everybody know what we're planning for Friday for you.
Well, I figured since we I'm doing these talks to get everybody all prepped up for the big meteor shower on Sunday night, which now, Joe, it's looking with increasing displeasure that we may not see. But the talk that I've been giving for libraries, I thought I'd deliver the talk and do it for all of our Joe and Joe fans here on Friday night. The Geminid meteor shower, and Sunday night we're billing that as the night of the shooting stars. And if it's not the night of the shooting stars, it may very well be the night of the hydrometeors from what we could see, and we'll get into that
All right,
in
so
I guess a little bit.
that's on board for Friday night, which is good. And we just want to thank everybody for that they've hit the like button so far. We really appreciate it. So if you do like our show, go ahead and make sure you hit the like button. Also, want to thank David Fuller and Paul Roman, who are early hitters of Super Chat tonight. Joe and I really do appreciate it greatly. Thank you so much. So I had flurries today,
You
and
did.
and it did not go above freezing.
I had 33 degrees.
No,
It was
never
33
made it above
degrees.
32 for me.
Yeah. Wow, that it was a cold one out there, no question about it.
Well, we were overcast until about maybe I would say probably about 3 o'clock or 3:30, and then the clouds finally moved out to the east. Now that happened sooner, of course, west of me, but because I'm in central Long Island, and yeah, about 3 o'clock, 3:30. So the sun came out. It was way too late to create any kind of significant daytime heating. So as a result, did not get above the freezing mark. I can't remember the last time that happened. I certainly have to go back to sometime last winter, probably last February or so.
Well, the fact is that here we did break out into sunshine about midday today. So that's why we sent you the sun, Joe, but it took a little while as
Yeah.
it headed out east in your direction. So the sun helped boost our temperature a big 1 degree above the freezing mark this afternoon, and that's why we got to 33.
So we still have a pretty quiet week. And by the way, this cold air made it all the way down into Florida because I have friends on Florida who were posting on Facebook on how painfully cold it's been. And my response to that was, "But is it a dry cold?" just to turn
Yeah.
just to turn the old dry heat thing around. But it's quiet across much of the country. And tomorrow morning, we actually have a warm front that's coming through tomorrow. And ahead of it, it looks like we're probably going to get some snow showers. Now, I always get a little leery with warm fronts because they can do weird things sometimes when they go by. And even though the models are showing that the snow showers are basically going to weaken as they move through, sometimes say mid morning to early afternoon. It wouldn't shock me if somebody winds up with a coating to an inch somewhere out of this. I mean, I wouldn't forecast that for an entire region, but warm fronts can do strange things sometimes. So I'm just going to try to bear that in mind tomorrow morning when these snow showers approach.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. But I can remember not a few surprises, not a few Gomer piles. Surprise, surprise. I don't want to see that happen, but then again, remembering back to some of those situations, it wouldn't be surprising if that were the case. We'll have to wait and see if that does transpire. I'm looking here, Joe. Well, I wanted to see the or show the RPM, but the RPM so far, the zero Z run is only out to 6 hours and 30 minutes. So
All right.
maybe
So
a little bit later.
when it gets out a little bit later,
Yeah.
just tell me, and we'll free up the board so that you
The
can.
RPM, by the way, for the uninitiated, when you watch on any of the TV stations, and they say we're looking at the future cast right now. The future cast, in all likelihood, that they're using the RPM, and um, sometimes it's pretty good at these kind of situations with the warm front. So we'll see what happens.
Adam Lowe pointing out that today a new record for the century, the lowest U.S. snow cover of this century. So I'm assuming we're talking about the last 20 years, and not the last 120 years or the last 100 years, but 11.4% of coverage in the
Hmm.
U.S. for snow cover, which for this time of year, I guess, is a little bit on the low side.
Yes, yes. Um, and right around now, this time of the year in New York City, we usually talk about getting the first inch of snowfall, but that doesn't look like it's going to
Yeah,
unless again, we have a surprise tomorrow, Joe. But that
yeah,
doesn't look
that's a
like it's
date
going to happen.
that's a date that can vary wildly in the month of December, and I don't know that it has any real bearing on what kind of winter it would be. Certainly, if we're sitting in the middle of January and we haven't gotten the first inch of snow, then it would probably be problematic. But right now, I don't think you could really make any kind of judgment with regards to the fact that it's the 8th of December and we still haven't seen our first inch of snowfall. Don't panic yet, snow lovers. There's lots of time.
Well, Mark G on the chat board says that's it. Winter's over.
Yeah, winter cancel. I'm trying to plot every time I try to plot the high temperatures, if it's after 7 o'clock, if it's after zero Z, the way they've got this map set up on the weather service, it goes over to the next day. So I can't get these numbers to plot. I wanted to see, it was low 40s down in southern New Jersey and southern Pennsylvania. North and east of New York City, it didn't get above freezing. So, look, my attempt at trying to do this is not apparently not working. So, I'm going to just go back to the station plot and take a look at what's going on right now. And actually, it's pretty much where it's been all afternoon and evening, at least on Long Island. Temperatures upper 20s to around 30. Everybody's pretty much in the upper 20s to around or just over 30 for 8 o'clock in the evening. I don't know if temperatures are going to fall too much tonight because eventually we're going to get into some cloud cover. And checking it out on the satellite, we'll bring up the GOES satellite, and you can see the clouds that are coming across southern Canada, curling over the Great Lakes, and then moving southward into Kentucky and to West Virginia, and even now into western New York and western PA. You see some of those high clouds are starting to get close. That's the leading edge of the warmer air that is moving in, and that's going to be our trigger mechanism for tomorrow. Not going to get a whole lot of moisture out of it, but it should put some snow shower activity. Again, I'm thinking mid morning to early afternoon.
Yeah, and another thing to point out, Joe, is that as cold as it was out there today, our friends to the north, Canada, has made a wholesale change toward much warmer weather, trending almost 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than this time last year. I know last year and the last couple of years, we were making comments about, oh, look at all that snow that's up over Canada, and look
Right.
how cold it is over North. That's quite the different story this year. It's in fact the warmest that Canada has been so far in over 35 years. Europe is similar to last year. Russia is the cool spot. China is warmer than last year, but still well below average. And India is the warmest that it's been in 4 years, in case any of you are contemplating going to India. in the foreseeable next few days.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of these numbers on the Canada side of New York and Vermont. Upper teens and low 20s there. You start to move if you go further west, like toward the shores of Lake Huron and points north. Actually, for this area, it is pretty warm, Joe. A lot of spots are even above freezing in the middle 30s. And I'm just going to drag it, go north of Lake Superior just to take a look at see what's going on. At Thunder Bay is 36.
And that's warm
Temperatures,
enough.
yeah. I mean, I'm north of, I'm looking north now of International Falls and Duluth, and you've got temperatures. Look, more temperatures are actually above freezing up here than they are below freezing, and that just tells you what's going on. You don't have true Arctic air that has it doesn't have an opening in the jet stream, at least not yet. Doesn't have an opening to come down and move that cold air down closer to the U.S. We're getting just basically polar air, which is nothing really to write home about, but the real bitter cold is still a ways away. Check out the radar tonight. There's really nothing going on of consequence. Most of the country is dry, except for a little bit of activity up in Washington State and in central Montana, and then in a few other spots here and there. But it is about as quiet as a radar as you can get. And on the surface map, our storm that has been sitting between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland is finally starting to pull away. Another coastal storm that developed yesterday off the Carolinas, that's basically taking over, and now that's pulling out to the northeast. And here's that warm front. Look at the temperatures, Joe, behind it, the warm front in Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota in the 60s as of 21Z, as of 5 p.m. And that's warm air that's pushing eastward. While ahead of it, it's in at 4 o'clock this afternoon. It was in the low and middle 30s throughout much of the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. It was only in the 40s down into northern Georgia and many areas in Florida hadn't even broken the 60-degree mark. So it was that cold air made it all the way down south. This cold air that's here in the east made it all the way down into Florida.
And to add to what you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, Joe, concerning snowfall, and this data comes from our friends over at Weather Trends 360. Snowfall season to date across the United States is down 43% below average from this time last year, which was the snowiest last year in 23 years. In fact, the past two falls, last year and the year before, were very snowy. So the year over year drop is one of the largest in decades
Right.
when you look at things this year.
And it also it led to the fact that the snowy autumn, depending on where you were, it certainly didn't mean for a snowy winter for the last two winters in the Mid-Atlantic states and in the coastal areas of the Northeast and on up through southern New England. So at least from that area's perspective, the snowy fall really didn't help much. But we'll see. There's a lot of time. It's December the 8th. There's a long, long way to go.
Right.
WPC's rainfall forecast for the next 7 days: quarter to a half an inch, central New Jersey, north and east. Much more for eastern New England. Again, whatever's left of the drought condition should be wiped out by now. Also seeing a stream of precip evolving from this next weather system for Saturday, but it'll be moving through the Mississippi Valley and the Ohio Valley come Thursday, Friday, and we're seeing rainfall amounts there on the order of about, let's say, I don't know, a half an inch to maybe an inch, isolated pockets of an inch and a half. The northern fringe of this is going to be snow. In the northwest, northern California, getting clobbered from northern California northward over the next 7 days through western Oregon and Washington, several to many inches of rain. And that continues to move on up into southwest Canada, and also some rain of significance in the southwest in Arizona, New Mexico. Well, this is going to be snow when you get up into the Rockies, of course, as you move your way up into Colorado. So pockets where precip is going to become a little bit more significant. I think the pattern is going to be a bit more active going through the weekend and through next week. There are a number of model differences, Mr. Rayo, that I have yet to resolve. For one thing, um, well, let's get to the short range first. I just kind of give everybody a sneak peek at the European for next Tuesday. We'll have to see if there's any reality to this or not. But I'll go back. I'll bring up the U.S. map and bring up the upper air. Uh, Joe, I don't know how much of the guidance you got to look at today at all.
Well, I looked at all of it, and the one thing I noticed was on several of the technical discussions from several Weather Service offices, they were talking about the discrepancies between the European and the GFS concerning the period from Sunday through early next week.
Right.
How the GFS is swinging a front through, and the European is more or less stalling it out and forming a developing storm near the Delmarva that comes up along that front Sunday night and on into Monday. And the thing that I took note of is that the GFS is all alone, Joe. I mean, if you look at the European, if you look at the Canadian model, if
Mm-hmm.
you look at the German model, if you look at the Japanese model, they're all saying basically in one way, shape, or form the same thing.
Well,
Front stall,
yeah,
yeah,
the Europeans got a vigorous cutoff moving across the southern stream for early next week. That the
right,
front does stall, and then you'll wind up getting maybe a second fairly well developed wave. The GFS doesn't seem to be seeing this at
right.
all.
Right. And interestingly, both models were on the same page, more or less, the European and the GFS, up until about yesterday. Yesterday, they both were showing the front, moving freely through the area, moving offshore, putting us in a robust and drier northwesterly wind. And all of a sudden, last night and today, the European has slowed everything down and is now showing that next developing disturbance to the south and west of us, moving in our direction for the beginning of next week, which is something totally different from what they were showing in previous days. And I want to tell you also, even before the European was showing this, the Canadian model for the past several days, I was watching for obviously for the meteor shower this weekend. And while the European and the GFS were, pushing that front on through, the European kept slowing the front down. I mean, it had it enveloped in rain Sunday and Sunday night. And I'm saying, what the heck is this? I mean, when is the European going to, the Canadian going to get on board with the GFS and the European? Now, all of a sudden, the European is kind of going along with the Canadian idea. So one has to wonder now how long it's going to be before the GFS slows everything down and starts saying, hey, yeah, there's going to be some problems at the beginning of next week with some kind of a wave or storm or something coming in our direction. We'll see.
Now, I'm bringing up a map that from one of the overnight model runs, and I think this pretty well says the kind of pattern that we're going to be in once we get starting this weekend, and I think possibly taking us through the end of the month. And think back to what we just saw last weekend and how we had the northern jet stream come along and the southern jet stream come along, and we were trying to figure out the phase of the two streams and how important this was for the outcome that we had, which for New England and for New England, it was the first widespread snowfall. The Boston didn't really get very much, but just west of Boston and just north of the immediate south coast of Connecticut, points northward, the snowfall in some places was fairly significant. I think what we're going to see, Joe, and it's kind of interesting to me because the if you look at the teleconnections that and how they're playing out, we're actually going to be negative, weekly negative to at times moderately negative on the North Atlantic oscillation right for the next 2 weeks. And the Arctic oscillation, surprisingly, is actually pretty strongly negative. Now, when the Arctic oscillation is negative, that creates a condition of higher pressures across the Arctic, which technically is supposed to displace cold air further south. The problem is that we don't have a really good connection running from the Arctic across Canada into the U.S. to bring in Arctic air. So we're going to probably be dealing with polar air. And then on top of all of that, we have a very active southern stream. The southern stream is going to be shooting short waves along it. And I think what you have to look for those of you who may have looked at the models this afternoon and saw what the GFS was trying to show in the longer range, uh, I would just at this time I would just kind of set it aside in terms of what it shows on an individual run. But the flavor of the entire pattern is going to be one where we're going to see these southern short waves moving along, and there's going to be systems in the northern stream that are going to be moving along, and the question is going to be is the timing. Are you going to have the southern something from the north come in and phase with something from the south? And maybe if it happens in just the right way, there could be enough cold air for snow a little bit further south than what we just experienced on this past weekend. I think it's that
And
simple.
you know that you look back to the winter of 82, 83, where that was an El Nino year, and there were a lot of storms that passed by that were more rain than snow. But there was that one case where we had one of those seemingly endless series of storms coming by, but that one came by just as the one of the few outbreaks from Canada came on down and established itself over the northeastern states, and that ended up producing the famed megalopolitan snowstorm with 1 to 2 foot amounts from Washington and Baltimore all the way up to Boston. So all you need is one, Joe.
Right.
And if you have this continuous flow of disturbances, that southern stream jet remains active for a very long length of time. Eventually, it's going to go to the well one time too often, and some of that cold air, that polar air, is going to have to break loose and interact. So it may not be this week or next week or even this month, but it will happen, I think, sometime during this winter season.
Now I'm going to bring up the GFS. I'm just going to go to the full view here for just a moment, and then we can talk about what's happening in the shorter range, and the implications beyond that. Uh, the um, the trough, of course, here in the east pulls out, and we get into just a little bit of ridging here. It's temporary because the next weather systems are just kind of sweeping along. And here's the one as soon as it finishes loading. Here's the one for this weekend, which pulls into the east. Now the northern jet for this is a little bit too far north, so it doesn't get involved too much until the system is long gone. Now the next system, the GFS actually has, Joe, what the European is doing just a little. It's just weak. This is on Monday night with a shortwave trough running from about Minnesota down into northern Alabama. But the GFS, the European, is much more vigorous. And over time, again, are you going to see these northern streams sort of come together, coming down and around as this southern stream energy gets kicked along? And there's a lot of systems running around over the next 16 days. The one thing, folks, what we got to get rid of is we got to get rid of if you want a better outlook for the winter, you got to get rid of this upper low that is sitting back in northwestern Canada. That's got to go. Okay, that is really preventing the connection. You know, your Arctic air is north of there, so that just pretty much shuts it off. There's Canadian cold air, and that tries to come down. But we got to change this profile up in here in Western Canada. If that somehow goes away, then I think you're going to wind up with a much more dynamic pattern. And maybe when we get into January, that's what's going to happen. We'll have to wait and see. But that's that part of the upper air in Northwest Canada. We've got to see that upper low get out of there.
Get out.
Get out. Go away. So
We don't want you.
correct. So on to the GFS here, and let's look at what adventures it has, and then we'll take a look at the European. Excuse me. The wine hasn't kicked in yet. So let's roll the GFS back. I love running
I'm looking at comment here from David Schwartz. And David Schwartz on the chat board says Farmer's Almanac uses a lot of climatology, past weather patterns during a La Nina, during a, well, it should be El Nino. I think he's meant to say La Nina,
Uh huh.
El Nino, La Nada. They actually have a meteorologist on staff that makes the predictions. I always thought that the Farmer's Almanac had a gentleman by the name of Caleb Weatherby. Is that really a meteorologist? Does anybody really know who the meteorologist for the Farmer's Almanac is?
I can't imagine who it would be.
But you have David Schwartz says, but you have to remember the book comes out in September, which means that the predictions were made at least 2 to 3 months earlier. No one is going to be accurate 12 to 18 months out.
But
That may be
it,
true.
it
That
only
may be true, but I'm looking at my I have a copy of the Farmer's Almanac here, and for the 12th to the 15th of December, they have major coastal or major storm,
for the
and
12th
now
to
all
the
of a sudden,
15th.
yeah.
So that would be the 15th is a week from today. Well, you're giving yourself a pretty big window there of 4 days.
Well, nobody is going to be accurate. You got to give them. The old Farmer's Almanac, Joe. I've seen them have like a 10-day stretch.
Yeah, no, we
You know,
don't
they
do.
have
Yeah, no, we're not doing
like
that.
10, like July 1 to 10, chance of showers and scattered thunderstorms. Oh boy, that really took a lot of thought, didn't it?
By the way,
No,
David Schwartz, I got your message about Dr. Judah Cohen. I didn't get a chance to read his blog yet, but apparently it sounds like from bits and pieces that I have heard that he may have essentially thrown in the towel as far as the winter is concerned. So, I don't want to be cynical, and I have a lot of respect for Dr. Cohen. That's not where I'm going with this, but just everybody, a lot of folks have already thrown in the towel on the winter. I find that fascinating on December the 8th that they've done that. I will tell you, Joe, without mentioning his name, that somebody that we both know who does long range has actually pointed out that the La Nina may be peaking and could begin to weaken and maybe even weaken rapidly as we get into January. And he's suddenly gotten more bullish for the second half of the winter. So that's an interesting perspective.
is that who is that? Mr. G?
No, no, wrong letter. Wrong letter. Our
uh,
buddy DT,
oh, okay.
David.
Mr. Hammer City himself.
That's correct.
Yeah, 12 to
Let's
12 to 15. Joe, northeast of New England. This is Farmer's Almanac now. 12 to 15, major East Coast storm, and in the southeast for the 12 to 15, rainy. So
All right.
there you go.
Steve Lapointe, thank you for hitting super chat tonight. We really appreciate it. And thanks again for those of you who have hit the like button tonight. 55 likes. That's a good thing. If you like the show, please, by all means, hit the like button. We like to see folks hit the like button. So, looking at our GFS model, we're going to warm up nicely with the high in a pretty good position. No no wind coming off the southwest, no wind coming in off the ocean. And then here's your low that goes over to the Great Lakes with the trailing cold front. And the GFS doesn't stall the front out, it just keeps on moving, which is a major difference from the other models because the follow up system on the GFS is very hard to even find. And then late next week, Joe, I mean, this doesn't look like a major storm to me when with regards to what's on the GFS. Now, later next week, along about Wednesday or Thursday, another low comes out and runs up with another cold front. Now, this one on the GFS stalls with some cold air behind it, and this is why it did what it did late this afternoon, which is develop a second wave off the Carolinas and actually brings a little bit of snow up the I-95 corridor. I don't know if I would put a lot of stock in this at this point because with all these systems running around, there is just too much energy and too much room for variability. I'll show you the difference with respect to the European and the GFS. We could even take a look at the Canadian, which I didn't do today. And by the way, I just want to respond to Smata Mott, who says, "Have I thrown in the towel for December?"
No,
I would just, yeah. I mean, no, I don't. First of all, I'm not a long range guy. So for those of you who've watched the show long enough, I really don't do. I mean, I do the long range. We do the long range on the models over the next 2 weeks. But in terms of the seasonal thing, I stay away from that because I just, as I've openly admitted, I just can't seem to get my head around the technical issues that you need to get your head around when it comes to the long range. And frankly, I some people really get into that. I don't. I like the short range. I have I like inside 7 days. I guess what I'm saying is I like the here and now, not necessarily what's going to be down the long way down the road. There's just too much. I've seen it happen too many times where people try to make these predictions going out for a whole season, 2 to 3 months, and then suddenly go back to the winters of 13, 14, and 14, 15, Joe Rayo, and it would be hard to find anyone. You'd be hard pressed to find anyone that was bullish during those two exceptionally cold and snowy winters.
Right.
So I just let things happen, and I follow along. But here's the upper air, and for on the GFSU. Actually, what it does, Joe, it takes that second shortwave in the southern stream and just kind of suppresses it south and out. Whereas the European, just by comparison, for Monday morning, and I'll run to get the European upper air. Excuse me. And the European has got a wrapped up one, two, three, four contours cut off in southern Mississippi with that southern stream system.
Right.
It really has. It's a whole different scheme because uh, the GFS seems to putting all its energy in the northern stream, which is what's coming through Saturday night and Sunday, and the European says no, that stays relatively weak, and it's the southern stream that gets really wrapped up here. And now you got a one, two, three, four, five, six contours cut off in northeastern North Carolina. And by the way, that translates on the surface. See, now the European would get that Farmer's Almanac has a better shot there. Yeah, it's got a 92 low in Chesapeake Bay, which it runs up toward Nova Scotia. And by the way, it also the European did produce a substantial amount of snow for areas not too far north of New York City. Actually gave about a little over an inch at White Plains, two at Poughkeepsie, four in Northeast PA, and then some bit. Once you go up north of I-90, then it goes 6 to 8 and across northern New England. I would just caution that the European has didn't do so well with the big amounts this past weekend, so it may be very much overdone. By the way, this snow map on the European is from pivotalweather.com, and we want to give them the courtesy of giving them credit for this. Pivotalweather.com. So I don't know, Joe. What do you think? European, GFS? Where are we going with
Uh,
this?
as I mentioned about 5 or 10 minutes ago, the fact is that the GFS seems to be all alone. That all the other models, in one way, shape, or form, is indicating or suggesting something that's going to take form to our south and to our west, either Sunday night or at the start of next week. Again, we'll see how this goes over the next couple of
Well,
days.
I
I
got the
guess that's all I
Canadian up here, so we could take a look at that. Yeah, I mean um, the Canadian same idea. It really doesn't have much of anything with the front. In fact, we hardly get any showers at all Saturday night into Sunday. The front
right.
stalls, second wave, 1,000 low. What is that? 1,003 low east of Delmarva, south of Montauk, with a little bit of snow on the northern fringe, and then that goes out east northeast, cold and dry behind it, and then another stronger wave for later next week, next Thursday. It's got a deepening low. Looks like what we just went through. What is that? A 982 low in southern New Jersey over Cape May, and heavier snows in upstate New York and northern New England. We'll have to see how it resolves, but that southern stream is very, very energetic, and I think we need to pay attention. Definitely have to pay attention to that.
Exactly. Precisely, Robin.
Precisely, Robin. Correct. So,
I saw Cesar Romero was on a Perry Mason a few nights ago.
really, on one of the older Perry Masons?
Yeah, one of the older Perry Masons. Yeah,
Oh, I think I remember that episode.
yeah.
It's very fake. I was
I
just
kept
I
I
was
kept wishing that he'd break into his Joker laugh.
Yes. Fat man and boy blunder. What is wrong with this sentence? Oh. Anyway, let's see. I got some Briller Jeopardy here somewhere. Uh, oh, okay.
Oh, wait
Jeff,
a minute.
by the way, Jeff,
Wait a minute. Hold it.
what?
Hold it.
What?
Before we have Briller Jeopardy,
Yes.
I have an alert. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, Joe, this definitely deserves a special alert. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready? By the way, I have to get a chance to share the screen.
Oh,
Ready?
we could still do that. You want to share the screen?
Hold on for a second.
Okay. They're coming to get me.
All right.
What's the?
We don't ring this siren very often, and actually, it's being generated by something that is coming out of NOAA. Believe it or not. All right, I'm going to shut the siren off.
Yes.
Shut off. There we go. Now I'm going to share the screen, and now. Okay.
What? Go on.
All right. Can I share the screen?
Yeah, sure. Hold on one
Sure.
second. One moment, please. Okay. Joe Rea wants to share the screen, so I gotta. Uh, okay, it's all yours.
This is important now. Let's see. What do I have? Let's share that screen. Hold on. What happened?
Whoops. Hold on. Yeah, I don't
A
know.
screen. No. Did I?
You did something. Hold on a second. 1 second here. I'm trying to get. Uh, yeah, no. Just give me a minute here. This is what happens. I have to figure out. There's a bug. I use a software program, folks, called OBS. It's an open source broadcast
All right.
software.
All right. I
And
just stopped.
all right,
I stopped sharing for the moment.
so I just a second. Let's see. So it's got a bug in it, so that whenever you go to share the screen, it knocks out. Oh Jesus, this is really ridiculous. Hold on. Nope, that's the other page. Okay, so that's the Zoom meeting. Oh, please don't leave us, folks. I'm trying to get this fixed. There we go. Okay, now try to share the screen.
All right. I'm going to share this with you right now. I'm going to do this. And why did that happen?
I don't know.
Do you, all right. Hang on. Do you see that on the screen?
I see major Aurora storm watch issued.
Okay. That just came over. That there's a possibility we may have a view of the northern lights, for goodness sake. Maybe not tomorrow night. I think this is for Thursday night. NOAA has now increased the strength and length of the storm watch 7 kp. That's the planetary K index. When you get to a 7, that theoretically means that the aurora is possibly visible as far south as the latitude of New York City. And they have just updated the article below. The first 24 hours, maybe 5 kp. That's not good enough for us. Next 24 hours after that, that would be for Thursday night, 7 kp. Final 24 hours Friday night, 6 kp. When does the Aurora Storm Watch begin? 72 magnetic storm watch began 1 hour and 24 minutes ago. And according to Jim Thomas, Soft Serve News, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, Space Weather Prediction Center, has issued a 72-hour magnetic storm watch indicating a coronal mass ejection of a high-speed solar wind stream emanating from the sun, may be heading toward the Earth. These fast-moving charged particles can cause a northern lights display. The current estimates are to when the aurora-causing particles should hit the Earth can be found in the chart below. So they're indicating around 4 p.m. 4 p.m. on the 9th of December to the 10th of December, midnight, 10th of December. When is that? That's tomorrow night? That's tomorrow night,
Tomorrow
isn't it?
night, yeah.
So they think that by tomorrow night around midnight, it may be enough. The particles entering the Earth's atmosphere, the subatomic particles, may be enough to trigger an aurora. So late tomorrow night, it is going to be clear tomorrow night, isn't it?
Yeah, it
Yeah, I
should
think
be.
so. Should be. So check your northern sky frequently tomorrow night late, because according to this, there may be a chance that we could see the northern lights. That's amazing.
All right. Let me
Would you love to see that? That would be
That would
incredible.
be pretty. That would be very cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the control from you. So let's see if that causes a problem on my end. Nope, it
Oh,
was perfect.
there you are.
Okay, so we're back, and that's a good thing. All right. So uh, in the meantime, a little bit of Briller Jeopardy is in order. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So stand by for that. Uh, Okay, so the category tonight, Mr. Rayo, is Alaska cities. So you must guess within 12 snowflakes, no, no, 12 inches, the average snowfall for the following cities. Are you ready?
hmm
Okay, Juneau.
Do you know hmm, they're right near the Pacific coast, and I wouldn't think they're going to get all that much, even though they're at a northerly attitude. I'd say I'll say 25 inches for Juneau.
69.8.
69.8.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is Alaska, by the way.
Yeah. But I just thought that their proximity to the Pacific coast would help to keep it down, but we'll see.
Barrow, Alaska.
Well, Barrow, it might be too cold to snow altogether. All right, but it is Alaska, right? I'll say 95 inches.
Nope, 37.7.
See, you see,
It's very dry up there.
I just said sometimes it gets too cold to
Yeah.
snow. I knew that. Oh,
Anchorage.
Anchorage, and I've been to Anchorage. What would Anchorage get? Anchorage, they actually have the. It's one of the stops on the that dog race,
Mm-hmm.
the Iditarod,
Mm-hmm.
Iditarod, 80.
74.5. So that was a good guess.
Okay,
All right, now this one will raise your limit to 50. So that should give you an idea that the number is large. Valdez, Alaska.
Valdez. How about 175?
326.
326.
And
So you see, folks. So you see, folks, if you couldn't get that nice house in Barnes Corner on the lee of the lake,
right.
Lake Ontario, and you really want to get some snow, you go up there to
Yes. And
Alaska.
last but not least, in the interior, Fairbanks.
Fairbanks. Fairbanks, I'll say 130.
65.
65?
Yeah. Now, as just like here, I guess it makes a difference whether it's at the airport or is it in downtown or, where, or if you just go outside of town. I'm sure there's large variability, but these are courtesy of the National Climatic Data Center for the period 1981 to 2010. And you can find them all in your Spiegel catalog, the Spiegel Catalog Company, Spiegel, Chicago, Illinois.
60609.
60609. We haven't
Yeah.
done that in a while. We haven't done the old Spiegel Catalog Company. I think
Well,
are they
they
still
had.
around? I mean,
I don't know if they are still around.
not as a catalog. Maybe they may do something online or something.
When I used to play with my sister, the Milton Bradley concentration games, I had a ball with that.
Right.
And I used to I said, and you'll get a set of jewelry brought to you by the Michael C. Fina Company. and
Well,
of course, and of course, the fur coat from
Dicker and Dicker of Beverly Hills. Okay, but that was an actual store in Beverly
It
Hills.
was. It
Okay.
was.
And
Yeah.
you know what's really tragic is I never really understood why they laughed until I was well into my 40s. I just
And
never,
that's why.
it just didn't click.
No,
And
it
I'm
didn't.
usually smart with that sort of stuff, but that just for some reason it didn't click because I didn't think, okay, it's a game show on the daytime. They weren't allowed to do, they weren't allowed to do innuendo, or at least
That was about.
I
That
thought
was
they
their
weren't
way of
allowed
pushing
to.
the envelope.
Oh, now in hindsight, I realize that they really did push the envelope pretty far. They they pushed it, licked it, put a stamp on it, and threw it in the mailbox.
especially with especially with the late Don Pardo. And it's brought to you by Dicker and Dicker of Beverly
Well, no,
Hills
that was Kenny Williams on Hollywood Squares,
on Hollywood Squares.
right?
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And Don Pardo was all the New York the New York game shows.
Everybody, by the way, talks about Walter Cronkite breaking in on As the World Turns when JFK was assassinated. But here in New York, WNBC Channel 4 was running a rerun of Bachelor Father with John Forsythe. And the man who broke into the program to announce the shooting in Dallas was Don Pardo, believe it or not. So
Really?
Don Pardo, his name in the history books, but again, everybody talks about Cronkite. They never talk about Don Pardo
No, no.
because he's such a jocular person.
Yeah. Well, anybody who's watched Saturday Night Live over the years knows the voice of Don Pardo because he was the announcer for that show too.
Yes.
So anyway, uh, all right. So we had a pretty good show here, 45 minutes with a late start at 8 o'clock. So we'll set it up for tomorrow at the regular time, which is 7:30 Eastern time.
7:30 Eastern Time. By the way, as a television viewer note, if you are interested, in 14 minutes on Me TV, they're going to be airing the very first episode of Gomer Pyle in glorious black and white. And Joe, this was when he became when Gomer was inducted into the Marines,
Right.
and they did exactly what happens to you when you become inducted in the Marines. You take the razor and you get a crew cut, and you can actually see this as Jim Neighbors' hair is getting cut away. He tells the guy who's about to cut. He says, "Well, when Floyd the barber back in Mayberry used to do it this way," and he's looking at Sergeant Carter, Frank Sutton, and Carter just raises his eyebrows and says, "Do your stuff," and off comes the hair, and it's great. It's not fake. I read somewhere that Jim Neighbors said no, they did, and it was a one take deal. They couldn't.
They had to take it right. Yeah, you have to get it right.
They had to get it right. So if you want to see the very first Gomer Pyle and see him get scalped, that's in about 13 minutes on MeTV.
The Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider and a provider of everything you need to get through this coming winter when it comes to winter storm cleanup. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, just north of the Southern State Parkway, 631-756-1125, or go to the website omnitruevalue.com. And just so, because somebody asked me about this, uh, if you put it in your ways, or if you put it, if for some reason it comes up about a quarter of a mile south of where it actually is. I don't know why the address is, when you put in this address, it comes up south of the Southern State Parkway uh,
On your
on the
GPS.
GPS and on Waze, when in reality it's actually north of the Southern State Parkway and it's on your right as you're going north. I don't know why. Maybe they used to have an office that was south and the maps haven't been updated. I know sometimes that happens with the GPS stuff, but it is north of the Southern State Parkway. Trust me.
All right.
All right.
So tomorrow we'll talk, and maybe we'll have something to talk about and look at tomorrow night with the Northern Lights. We'll see.
All right. Very good. Yeah, let's stay on top of that because that'll be something really fun to see. All right, folks, have a great night. Thanks for being here. The super chat hitters tonight: Paul Roman, David Fuller, Steve Lapointe. Thanks for doing it. 68 likes. Thank you for liking the show. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Goodbye.
Well,